You know the feeling before you can name it. It starts somewhere below the throat, a tightening, a shift in temperature, something in your jaw or your chest or the back of your neck that changes before the thought has formed. And then the voice changes, yours, not the one you practice in calm moments, the other one. And the words are out, and the moment has happened, and your brain is only just catching up. 2 seconds, maybe less. That's the window between the thing arriving and the reaction firing. 2 seconds, sometimes nothing, a gap so small that all the intention in the world doesn't fit inside it. You've tried to widen that window. Every technique you've learned has been in some way an attempt to get inside those 2 seconds and do something different. Breathe, pause, name the feeling, take a moment, and sometimes it works. In the calm moments, in the low stakes ones, in the ones where the load isn't too heavy and the day hasn't already cost you everything, and sometimes, especially then, especially in those moments, it doesn't. The window closes before you reach it. The reaction has already happened, and you're standing in the aftermath wondering how, again, you got here. Today, we're going inside those 2 seconds because what's actually happening is not what you think. And once you understand it, you'll finally understand why nothing you've tried has ever been able to reach it. Welcome back to The Family Architect. I'm Philippa Scott, episode 36, and we're continuing the attachment trauma series. In episode 34, we established the central idea that the reactions you can't stop are attachment wounds wired into your nervous system from childhood, running a protection program that fires before your mind has time to choose. In episode 35, we looked at the different shapes that wound takes: the eruptor, the one who disappears, the shame loop, the shutdown, the parent carrying their birth. Today, we go into the mechanism. What's actually happening in the body in those 2 seconds, why the window is so narrow, why everything you've done to widen it has worked on the wrong thing, and what it actually takes to change it. Not manage around it, change it. This is the episode that explains why you already know what to do and your body won't let you do it. Let's start with what's happening before the 2 seconds, because the window doesn't begin when you feel something. It begins much earlier, in the process happening below the level of conscious experience. Your nervous system is constantly scanning, not intentionally, not as a choice, as an automatic, continuous, below conscious process that has been running every moment of your life since you were born. It scans the environment, the sounds, the sensations, the emotional weather of the room, the face of the person in front of you, and it makes a rapid assessment. Safe, not safe. Safe, not safe. This assessment is not made by the thinking part of your brain. It is made by much older, much faster structures, the parts of the brain responsible for survival, not reasoning. The part that was fully formed before language arrived, before the ability to reflect on experience, before any of the conscious, intentional parenting work you've done. When the assessment comes back as safe, the nervous system stays in an open, social, regulated state. The thinking brain is online. You have access to your values, your intentions, your knowledge of what good parenting looks like. The 2-second window is available. When the assessment comes back as not safe, when something in the environment is coded as threat, the nervous system does what it was built to do. It mobilizes. It redirects resources away from your thinking brain and toward the survival response. Your jaw tightens, your voice changes, your heart rate shifts. Your body is already in motion. And here is the part that matters most for this conversation. This threat assessment happens before you are conscious of it, before the thought, before the feeling you can name. The body has already decided and is already responding by the time you know something has happened. The 2-second window is not a gap between the stimulus and the feeling. It's the gap between the feeling and the full-blown response. And your nervous system is already in motion before the window opens. Now, here's where the attachment wound enters the picture, and this is the piece that explains everything. The threat assessment your nervous system is running is not objective. It's not evaluating the actual level of danger in your current environment with fresh eyes every time. It's evaluating the current environment through the lens of every previous environment it has learned from. Specifically, it is weighted towards the environments of your childhood, because those early environments were where the nervous system learned its most fundamental lessons about what was dangerous and what was safe. Those lessons are the deepest wiring, laid down before the brain had the capacity to reason about them, which means they cannot be reasoned away. So, when your child's big feelings arrive, the screaming, the crying, the emotional intensity of a person who has not yet learned to manage their own inner world, your nervous system runs through its assessment system. And if the big feelings were dangerous in your house growing up, the assessment comes back not safe. Before you've had a thought, before you've registered what's happening, the old learning has already issued its verdict. Your child is not a threat. Your nervous system has coded their emotional intensity as threat adjacent because emotional intensity was threatening when you were small. And the coding is so fast, so deep, so automatic that it is completely inaccessible to the thinking, intentional, well-read parent you're trying to be. This is what we mean when we say the wound is wired in. Not wired in as metaphor, wired in as literal description of how your nervous system is running the threat assessment that happens before you can intervene. There is one more layer of this that I want to name because I think it explains something parents often experience but can't account for. When your child is distressed, when they're crying or angry or in that specific quality of need that children have, you don't just observe their emotions from the outside. You feel something in response to it. Something in your own body, a resonance, sometimes almost physical. And that's not weakness. This is your nervous system doing exactly what nervous systems are designed to do in relationship. We are wired to pick up on the emotional states of the people we're close to. This is one of the mechanisms by which parents know what their children need. It is also, when the parent's own system carries an unresolved wound, the mechanism by which the child's distress becomes the parent's distress. The child cries, the parent's body responds as if something threatening is happening because emotionally, at a somatic level, something familiar to threat is happening. The parent's little girl who learned that this quality of feeling is dangerous has been activated. She's responding with everything she has. It is not your child's emotion you are reacting to, it is your own. The child's emotion arrived, activated the stored material in your nervous system, and now you're reacting to what is happening inside you, not to what is happening in front of you. Which is why no amount of understanding what your child needs, no amount of knowledge about their developmental stage, no amount of script or strategy for responding to them changes the reaction. Because by the time you're reacting, the content isn't really about them. I want to be very specific here because I think this is the piece that finally makes sense of years of frustration. Every technique, every strategy, every parenting approach you've tried to use to change your reaction has been working on the output, on what happens after the nervous system has already fired, on the words that come out, the tone of voice, the way you exit or escalate or shut down. The breathing, the pause, the walk away and come back, the script you practiced in calm moments, the mantra that you have on a post-it note on your bathroom mirror. All of these are interventions at the output level. They are the things you try to do after the nervous system has already made its assessment, already mobilized, already redirected resources away from the thinking brain. And some of them help some of the time, when the load isn't too heavy and the activation isn't too strong, when the window is wide enough for the intervention to fit inside it. But when the wound is activated, When the specific quality of threat that your nervous system learned to respond to has arrived, the window closes faster than any technique can reach, because the technique lives in the thinking brain and the threat assessment lives somewhere much older and much faster. Deep breaths cannot fix what's wired in, not because breathing is useless, because breathing is a thinking brain intervention applied to a survival brain response. It can sometimes slow the escalation. It cannot change the wiring that produces the response. Gentle parenting scripts cannot fix what's wired in, not because scripts are wrong, because the scripts require a regulated nervous system to deliver them. A nervous system that has already fired in survival response does not have access to the considered, warm, regulated voice the script was written for. You already know what to do. Your body won't let you do it. And now you know why. So if the techniques work on the wrong thing, if the output interventions can't reach the input wiring level, the input level wiring, what does? The window widens when the threat assessment changes, not when you get better at managing the response after the assessment, when the assessment itself comes back differently. And the threat assessment changes when the stored material that is loading it gets resolved. And the threat assessment changes when the stored material that is loading it gets resolved. This is a precise statement, and I want to make sure it lands precisely. Your child's big feelings are activating a threat response because your nervous system has stored experiences from childhood, possibly from your birth, possibly from other significant experiences that associated emotional intensity with danger. That stored association is running the assessment. It is adding weight to the stimulus that the stimulus does not deserve on its own merits. When that stored material is resolved, not suppressed, not reframed, not breathed through, but actually metabolized at the level of the nervous system where it lives, the assessment lightens. The stimulus arrives and the nervous system, now evaluating it without the accumulated load of old experience, comes back with a different verdict. Not safe becomes neutral. Not safe becomes this is hard but manageable. Not safe becomes my child is having a big feeling and I can be here for it. The window widens not because you've learned a better technique for what happens inside it. The window widens because the thing that was closing it so fast has been resolved. Resolution at a nervous system level is not a metaphor and it is not a reframe. It is specific work done in specific ways that address the stored experience where it actually lives in the body, in the nervous system, in the material that predates language. Talk therapy is not sufficient for this, though it can be valuable alongside it. You cannot talk your way out of the material that was stored before talk was available. You cannot reason your way past an assessment that runs faster than reason. The work that resolves stored trauma at the nervous system level is somatic, body-based. It works with what's happening in the physiology, not just the narrative. It does not require you to relive experiences in painful detail. It requires the stored charge in your body, the old threat response that got locked in, to finally complete and release. Your unconscious is running your body. We have to work at an unconscious level because that's what the body responds to. When it does release, something changes that no technique produces, not a better strategy for the next time the window opens, an actual widening of the window, an actual change in how the stimulus lands. Parents who've done this work describe it in similar ways. They don't say, I've learned to respond better. They say the thing that used to set me off doesn't hit me the same way anymore. They say there's a space now that wasn't there before. They say I can be present in the moment in a way I couldn't access before, no matter how hard I tried. That is not management, that is resolution. I want to close with something that I hope reframes the years of effort you've put in. Everything you've tried, the books, the therapy, the techniques, the scripts, it was not wasted. It kept you in relationship with your children through the hardest moments. It built a foundation of genuine intention that matters. It brought you here to the point where you're ready to hear what the actual mechanism is and what the actual resolution requires. But it was working on the wrong layer. And you deserve to know that, not as a criticism of what you've done, as a reorientation towards what comes next. The techniques keep the lid on. Resolution lifts the pressure underneath the lid. And lifting the pressure is available to you, not as a distant, aspirational, years away possibility, as the actual next step for this specific nervous system, with this specific history, carrying this specific wound. The little girl inside you built her protection program because she needed it. She did her job perfectly, and she's been doing it ever since because nobody ever came to tell her that the emergency was over. That's the work. Not managing her response, letting her know she can finally put it down. Next week, we're talking about resolution, what it looks like, what it involves, how TRTP specifically works at the level of the nervous system we've been describing. If today's episode has made the mechanism clear, next week is about the pathway through. In the meantime, the Wired quiz is in the show notes. It'll take you only a few minutes. It names your specific protection program. That's your starting point because the resolution work is most effective when it's targeted. When you know specifically what you're working with, not just generally that something needs to change. And if you're ready to move sooner than next week's episode, if this series has clarified something you've been sitting with for a long time, the Regulated Mother Method and the TRTP Intensive are both in the show notes. Those are the pathways to the actual work. I'll see you next week. I'm Philippa Scott. This is The Family Architect.